My friend, it is great to have you with us once again. College football season's getting close, and you and I need to have conversations.
Hey, Steve. Good to hear your voice again, my friend.
Same here. Everything changes now. Officially, Texas and Oklahoma in today in the SEC. Everybody else in the Pac-12 can't officially change until the 2nd of August, but everybody's in for intents and purposes. What did that do to how you have to put together the publication and how you were ranking players because of the additions?
Yeah, it made it very interesting. And, as far as ranking teams go, Steve, I've never had to rank an 18-team conference before with no divisions. So, there's going to be a lot of ties in the Big Ten this year. You've got 18 teams. You've only got 9 possible outcomes for the record. So it's going to be a lot of ties there. 16 teams for the SEC. Made it very unusual, very bulky as far as predicting the conferences and divisions go this year. As far as the players go, pretty much seamless to me. I think when you take a look at the Pac-12 last year, the Pac-12 was one of the best conferences in the country last year. So them sliding into the Big Ten is not like, let's say, the American Conference had a couple teams go into the Big 12 last year, and none of them really fared well. It's a different animal with the Pac-12 Big Ten, especially when you're taking basically 4 of the top teams from the Pac-12 sliding over. So the stats and things that the individual players did in the Pac-12, very comparable to what they'll do in the Big Ten.
Transfer portal means a lot in all this, so let's take a couple of transfer portal quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Let's start with Dylan Gabriel. He steps in at Oregon after going from UCF, doing well at Oklahoma, and then transferring to Oregon, where now Bo Nix is a part of the Denver Broncos. How do you view what he can do in that Oregon offense for Dan Lanning as opposed to what maybe Bo Nix did?
Well, I don't think he's going to match Bo Nix's numbers from last year. Those are pretty phenomenal. 45 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions, 4,500 yards total passing, 78% completions. However, when I talked to Coach Lanning, went over the team with him, he said he's a lot like Bo Nix in a lot of ways. He was very pleased with what he had coming in. He's a guy that has a lot of confidence. You can coach him hard. He's got a great attitude. He's humble. And he has produced, while not a 45-3 ratio, his ratio last year was an outstanding 30 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions. He had 69% of his passes. I think he'll thrive in the Dan Lanning offense, but I don't think he'll quite match what Bo Nix did last year statistically.
All right. Now, Ohio State is a group that for the most part has done the homegrown quarterback route. Will Howard's a part of this now, but my understanding was at Kansas State he wasn't assured of having that job with Avery Johnson there. What's the impact you potentially see with Will Howard in the Chip Kelly offense under Ryan Day?
I think it's probably going to be a good fit because you're going to see the quarterback run more in this offense. And I think they can afford that. Generally, if you're going to run your quarterback more, you cannot afford injuries. But they've got Devin Brown, and they've got a couple of very highly touted freshmen, Julian Sand and Aaron Noland in the back. So they are able to run him more, and I think that's when Will Howard is most effective. I do think Will Howard probably would have lost his starting job at Kansas State this year. But with the supporting talent he has, like a Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins at running back, with the receiving core they have, with the Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, and the solid offensive line, I think he'll fit well in the offense. I just don't think he'll be one of those Heisman type of contenders.
Right, exactly. All right, now Penn State's gone homegrown with its quarterbacks. When you've had an opportunity to really examine the Nittany Lions, what do you like about the team? What are a couple of parts that give you pause?
Well, I do think you're going to see Drew Allar have a much better season this year. The team's got more confidence in him. He already had a 25-2 ratio last year. Yep. What I mean by much better, I mean throw for more yards. He threw for 2,600 yards last year. Definitely will top 3,000. And I like the depth they have at quarterback as well. When you look at Perbula and you look at Grunkemeyer, they've got depth there. The running back position didn't get the bang that you would have expected out of Singleton and Allen last year. I think they get that this year, so I like that a lot. And the offensive line, they could be up to last year's standards, but not quite as strength yet. So offensively, I like the quarterbacks and running backs. I still have question marks at wide receiver, Steve. It's really probably my biggest question mark on the team. Defensively, there's just a lot to like. When you look at the defensive line, I rate it second best in the country.
Yep.
Linebackers number 6, DBs number 9. Yes, they lose some players out of the secondary, but I like the replacements they have coming in. No questions about any of the 3 units on defense, and no questions about special teams. I rate it number 9 in the country. So I like pretty much the entire team. Question marks, major question mark at receiver, and a minor question mark on the offensive line.
Yeah, and I'll give you a name that I want you to watch, because obviously I saw your 4 teams on the All Big Ten, and this is the prejudiced announcer coming out here. Okay, okay, watch out for KJ Winston at the safety spot. Let's somewhere down the line, I think he may give you a thought about putting him on one of your teams. Okay.
Yeah, Coach Franklin told me he was an all-conference player, so he agrees with you 100%.
All right. So, but that doesn't mean we can't disagree on something. That's okay.
That's right.
And I may be too close to it. You know what I mean? As opposed to so there's differences. All right. So now, go ahead.
And when you follow one time, sometimes it's tough to. You got 16 teams in the league, so there's a lot of players out there. But I probably could have put Winston on that list. So I'm going to keep an eye on him, Steve. I appreciate that.
No. And believe me, I appreciate what you do. It was interesting years ago. I was doing the Outbound Bowl. Penn State was playing Arkansas. Arkansas had beaten Texas, and rather soundly, like 41-16 or some number in favor. And I asked Chuck Barrett, their play-by-play guy, I said, hey, Texas is coming in. How do you think they fit? He says, Oklahoma will fit fine. He says, Texas, isn't physical enough. In your opinion, has Texas in the last 2 years become a more physical team that can play in the SEC?
Yes, they definitely have. And, look no further than last year when they had guys like Tavondre Sweat up front along with Byron Murphy, very physical defensive tackle. In fact, that's probably the major question you have is who's going to replace those guys at DT. But they've got Collins and Broughton. Bill Norton they bring in from Arizona. They bring in a Louisville transfer and Jermaine Lowell. So they're physical up front. And offensive line, they've got one of the best offensive lines in the country. I rated number 2 overall. They also have the best quarterback room in the country. This is a Texas team that can come in and compete in the SEC right away. I rate them number 4 in the power poll and number 4 overall. And they get Georgia at home on October the 19th, so it's going to be a big game.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing how Georgia plays at Texas before they ever play a game at Texas A&M, because they've never played a game at Texas A&M. They've been in the conference for 12 years. So it's the strangest thing. How they do their business is very interesting. Right, so now let's get to the Oklahoma part of it. Oklahoma's coming off one of those. They beat Texas, but they had one of those rather interesting seasons. Where do you see them standing with all new opponents?
Well, I'll give you 2 ways that I view Oklahoma, Steve. The first one is my power poll, which is the overall talent they have on the team. I rate them number 7 in the country. When you look at them, it's Brett Venables' 3rd year. I've gone over the team with Coach Venables each year, and you can see this defense is loaded this year. It's much different than when he first took over. And, his defenses are a little complex. 3rd year, these players all know it inside and out, led by Danny Stutzman at linebacker, Billy Bowman at strong safety. They're going to have a heck of a defense. Offensive line is probably my biggest question mark. They lose 5 offensive linemen from last year's team, but Bill Bedma is still there as the offensive line coach. He's one of the best in the country. And Coach Venables told me he feels good about the offensive line. Now, Jackson Arnold didn't have an overwhelming bowl game, but I think he will fit in well. And the receiving core and running backs are solid. So this is a very talented team. However, they draw the SEC's toughest schedule this year. They basically play all the big boys, with the exception of Georgia. They play Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, Texas, Auburn on the road, Tennessee. So the SEC's toughest schedule. And it's the reason I only have them rated number 20 in the country in my actual preseason top 40.
Yeah, because I look at Jackson Arnold. I mean, I go back, I think it was the Alamo Bowl. He threw a couple touchdowns. He did some good things. He threw for over 350 yards, but he threw 3 picks in that game. Right? And I know it's only one game, but that's normally not what you see I'd like to see a little bit more out of him. What about you?
Yeah, that's it exactly. I was expecting him to really light it up in the Alamo Bowl. And as you mentioned, the yardage was there, the touchdowns were there, but 3 interceptions is something you cannot have. In fact, he had, in that one game, half as many interceptions as Dylan Gabriel threw in the entire season. But let's keep in mind he was a freshman.
Yep.
This is his first time on the big national stage, and now he's had a full year to work as the number 1 guy. So I think we'll see big-time improvement in that category, and I look for a much better ratio out of him this year.
Whenever we talked, Phil, about the playoff in the past, we'd say, who are the 4 teams? Now it's 12. So what are
You're not going to make me name all 12, are you, Steve?
No, I'm not going to make you name all 12. We're not going to I'm not going to do that. You know what? The reason I'm not going to make you name all 12 is I need people to buy the publication for you.
I appreciate that, Steve.
But when you look at it, where's the door open for somebody that hasn't been in it before or has maybe been in it once, and 12 gives them the opportunity to get there?
Let's. I don't want to sound like a hometown team here, but let's open the door with Penn State right off the bat. Right. Penn State's been landlocked behind Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten East for years. Now this year they avoid Michigan, they avoid Oregon, they avoid Iowa. They do have to play Ohio State, but they get them at home. And I think when you look at Penn State and James Franklin, they have the talent this year. There's some questions on I mentioned on the offensive line and receiver. All the other positions are loaded, especially defensively. They're number 29 in my experience chart coming in. And I actually have them favored in 11 of their 12 games this year. The only one I don't is the Ohio State game. So I think Penn State's got that opportunity to not only make the playoff, but make some noise as well. And then how about a team like Utah? Utah last year had 5 losses, so naturally nobody's really looking at them. They're not going to be in the preseason top 10 at the start of the year. But last year Utah had a really tough schedule. They played most of their tough opponents on the road. They lost Cam Rising prior to the season, had a myriad of injuries during the course of the year, and they lost 5 games. But just 2 years ago, they were in the Rose Bowl. 3 years ago, they were in the Rose Bowl. Cam Rising's back, solid on the offensive and defensive line, moving to a new conference, the Big 12. And I think they can dominate the Big 12 and win it and then make themselves into the playoffs. And Cam Rising has proven he can play with the big boys in the big games. So I think Utah's a team that could make some noise. And maybe one more. I will go back to the Big Ten and pick on Iowa. I know Iowa hasn't had the offense in recent years, but they've got the defense this year. In fact, I expected a bunch of their defensive players to turn pro. They didn't. They all returned. Players like Nick Jackson, Sebastian Castro are back. They've got one of the best defenses in the country, one of the best special teams in the country, an offensive line that now has a veteran unit with almost everybody back. Cade McNamara, if he can stay healthy, and he wasn't even healthy at the start of last year, and wasn't healthy until he got injured. If he can have that year that you expected, they've got the running backs with Williams and Johnson. They've added some talent at receiver. They may actually have an offense to go with the defense and special teams. And then when you look at their schedule, Steve, who do you put them an underdog at this year? I mean, the road games are at Maryland, at UCLA, which is in down year, at Michigan State, at Minnesota. All those winnable. You would put them an underdog at Ohio State, but the Vegas total on them coming into the year is 7.5. Find me 5 losses on that schedule, Steve.
I can't, and also the Tim Lester effect as the offensive coordinator is going to be interesting with them. And they have put themselves in an interesting position because they have locked in 25% of their schedule forever because they have guaranteed games with Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. Because the Big Ten asked, who do you want to be as your rivals? You could have up to 3. They took all 3, so they've locked in 25% of their schedule and 1/3 of their Big Ten schedule in perpetuity.
Wow, that is interesting, and that's. I think they're really set up this year. As mentioned, I thought a lot of their players were going to turn NFL, much like Ohio State. Ohio State had a lot of players come back that could have gone. Watch out for the Iowa Hawkeyes this year.
Yeah, that's right. With Ohio State, Jack Sawyer could have gone, stayed. JTT could have gone, he stayed. Burke could have gone, he stayed. Those are all on the defensive side. And then there's, when I look at Cam Rising, for example, I'm the guy that was announcing the game when he got hurt. So I saw the play and called the play. But when I watched him on the video, and then when I saw him in person, he's a really good college quarterback that has a swagger to him that you can only define if you watch him play. And I think that makes a big difference because they play a power style that the Big 12 is going to have to get used to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, last year, if Rising went down, you expected Brandon Rose to step right in and take his place. He was one of the higher-rated quarterbacks at the high school, big arm, mobile. He had got injured in the preseason, so they were down to their number 3, number 4, number 5 QBs during the course of the year. And basically, teams could load up the box and stop them. And as mentioned last year, a bunch of their big games were on the road, where you get to Rice-Eccles Stadium. I don't know if you've ever been there, Steve, but it is one of the loudest venues out there. They've got the students, or they're called the MUSS, M-U-S-S, and it's the student section. They get most of their tough games at home this year, so they're a team to look out for.
Yeah, have not. And that's a place I want to go. I do have to ask you about Alabama with Kalen DeBoer. It's been interesting with them, and now when you talk, I'm sure you talked to him as well. What was the impression he had of his team? Because it's not as if he's never been to a national championship game. Last time I checked, that was January.
Absolutely. And I got to be honest with you, Steve, when Nick Saban stepped down, I remember all those folks hit the portal, big-time names going in the portal. I'm like, okay, maybe Alabama's in for a rebuilding season. But talking to Coach DeBoer and going over the team with him, first of all, it's a talented team, really good roster, and he brought in some players like Parker Brailsford. Remember they had snapping problems at Alabama last year. A lot of bad snaps during the year. Solved. They brought in the Joe Moore Award-winning center, Parker Brailsford, to handle that. In the secondary, they lost some key players, but they bring in a Damani Jackson from USC, a Keon Saab from Michigan. So they're in good shape there. And going over the squad with them, I feel they actually have more talent on this year's Alabama team than he had on last year's team that played the national title at Washington. And keep in mind, he's 104-12 as a head coach. And my first question to him, Steve, was what's it like taking in this, filling the shoes of a legend? How tough is that? And he says he can handle it, and he's pretty confident about that. So I liked everything about going over the squad with them. We talked for at least an hour going over the team, and I think they're going to be a surprise contender. I think a lot of folks are writing them off because Nick Saban's gone, a lot of talent left, but they have a lot of talent there, and Kalen DeBoer can sure get it out of them.
Beware of an Alabama team that you're like, okay, we're okay now. Beware. I know Caleb Downs is with Ohio State, but Saab's a good player. Came in from Michigan, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So, hey, absolute pleasure. This went by in a blink as usual, and we will catch up again, I hope, before the season starts.
Well, we better, Steve. I mean, as you mentioned, I could have swore we just got on the phone here, and we're done with it already. So, yes, we should definitely do this more times.
Thank you, Phil. You're the best. And, again, his publication, get it. And the primary places they can get it would be?
The only places you can get it are Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. Those are the only two places that you can go out and get it. So save your gas money. Barnes & Noble, Books A Million exclusively, or philsteele.com. And when you go to philsteele.com and get the hard copy, we give you the digital copy for free, and we actually update the digital all the way through September. So Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, philsteele.com.
Absolutely. Phil, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good, Steve. Have a good one, my friend.
You too. The great Phil Steele.
Hello, sir. How are you these days?
I'm doing well, getting myself immersed in some Penn State football stuff so I can call the first game.
Nice.
Yeah, it is nice. Let's start with the Eagles. One preseason game. That's fine. To me, it's all about roster spots, 40 to 53. That's what I think preseason games are. Maybe I'm wrong. Any general thoughts on the opener?
Yeah, it was a good peak. That's what it is. And when I say peak, that's P-E-E-K, not E-A-K, because if it was a peak, then it would have been phenomenal. With the defense playing a handful of snaps for the starters and the offense playing one offensive starter, how much did we really learn? We learned some debate as to who's going to make the team, who's going to be the 40 to 53rd guy. But I'd say no one should be perturbed by the Eagles' first effort. Jake Elliott should be happy he got a second chance to make good and take a game-winning field goal, but nobody should be all that excited either because their subs are slightly better than the Ravens subs. What does that really tell us about the upcoming 2024 season?
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. I'll say they got an interesting guy in the draft that is not a superstar, but I always thought he was a rock-solid college running back in Will Shipley. Now, is he going to start? No. But what was just your general impression of seeing him for the first time?
Got the touchdown on a nice play, nice pass, as a matter of fact. I'm not the biggest Kenny Pickett fan, and he didn't wow me the other day, but that was a nice play. You got to give credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
I am on record as predicting, before the game the other night during the offseason, after A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, that Will Shipley will be the Eagles' fourth leading wide receiver. Because everyone wants to talk who's going to be wide out three. Is Paris Campbell up to it? Johnny Wilson has looked very good as a sixth-round draft pick in camp. Who can emerge? Will Howie Roseman go out and get another wide receiver before the season starts? I think Shipley can carry that load. And you may see, because the offensive coordinator is going to be a little bit more diverse this year, going to try some different things, you may see two back sets where both Barkley and Shipley are in the backfield together, and then Shipley goes in motion into a slot spot. And, yeah, I think he can get separation, and I think he can make plays, and it's good to see that he and Jalen are already kind of on the same page at practice, and Pickett, because he caught the touchdown pass the other night. Yeah, I'm a Shipley guy. I thought it was a very good draft pick, a value draft pick, and if they just let production be their guide, I think he'll be the number two back behind Saquon Barkley this year ahead of Kenny Gainwell.
I'm completely agreeing with you because, again, he is a productive guy who plays hard. I mean, Shipley plays the game hard, and he just seems to have a knack and a feel as to how to play the game, even though he may not be the greatest athlete on the field.
And one of the pluses for me, and I may be just whistling Dixie here, is when you got a rookie guy, and if he's got talent, the other team doesn't know him. Everyone knows what Paris Campbell's going to bring to the table. So I think he can be covered. If you've got a rookie that the other teams have only a college scouting report on, how he's going to be played, how he's going to be used, what kind of routes they're going to run him on coming out of the backfield, I think that can be a plus, and Shipley could be a nice ancillary contributor for the Eagles this year.
When you're looking at this team as a fourth and fifth wideout that eventually could be used because somebody gets banged up, is there anybody standing out to you?
Yeah, if it's not going to be Shipley in these alternate formats, Johnny Wilson has opened people's eyes.
Yeah.
Big kid, and you don't usually think of 6'4" guys. Some teams use 6'4" guys in the slot. They may, because both A.J. Brown and more so Devontae Smith have the flexibility of going in and playing in the slot. Yeah, you can see him stepping up and being the guy who gets the most snaps at the wide receiver when they're in three wide receiver sets. And I think the offensive coordinator will enjoy making it difficult on defenses by using different guys at different positions outside and in the slot. They all have the flexibility and the talent to do it, so that could be a plus if Wilson continues to show that he's ready to play in the league.
Is there somebody on defense that we should take a closer look at that might be a contributor to help out the guys they already have?
Good question. Here is the key guy for me coming into the season, because I think we've got a good guy. We know the big guys from Georgia have to do the job in the middle, and hopefully we got a bounce back year from Josh Sweat this season. But the fact that they're using Quinyon Mitchell in the slot tells me this secondary is going to be much improved this year. Last year they just got eaten up, certainly in the collapse of the last couple of games, but even earlier in the season, their coverage was just not good enough on the outside and in the slot. If Quinyon Mitchell is that good that they put him in there just to test him out, and he now looks like the lead guy to be their slot receiver, that means Vic Fangio knows he can do the job, and he'll be good at it. And if they've got a combination of Rodgers and Ringo outside across from Slay, that they've been good enough that they've been able to experiment with Quignon in the slot, that tells you they really like what they're seeing out of their defensive secondary. And that could be a major area of improvement for this Eagles defense from last year that just wasn't good enough.
Are you surprised at all that Hassan Reddick has already requested a trade from the Jets?
Nope, not at all. What I'm surprised at is that Joe Douglas didn't understand the way things work in the National Football League. If you trade for a guy and they got him for a reasonable amount, not a overpay, not a steal, about going rate for what it was going to be. I thought all along when they had if he plays X amount of snaps, it'll move up to a higher pick. Yeah, that's not happening. You knew that was already happening. So the Eagles are going to get a third for him. If you're going to give up a third, you have to know that you can get close to the number that is the player is looking for from his agent.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was at least one conversation where Hassan's, before the trade went down, this is the kind of numbers we're going to be asking for. And I got to believe the Jets said, oh, okay. Maybe they didn't say, we'll get the deal done. Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. But they said, all right, we can negotiate off that. And they came in, they made him an offer, and it wasn't anywhere near the ballpark that Hassan was looking for. And he decided, yeah, I said I'd show up for camp. I'm not showing up. You're disrespecting me with the offer you put out there. That's on the Jets. You can't make that deal unless you are X amount of % confident you can get a deal done, and I'm sure the two parties are not even close right now. So Howie Roseman made a very smart move. I was not happy when they traded Hassan Reddick. I'm a big Hassan fan.
Yep.
And I'm not sure that Huff, the guy that they brought in from the Jets, is going to be able to do Hassan Reddick things on Eagle defense this year. But if you get a third-round pick for a guy that isn't going to even be showing up at camp, the Eagles made the right move. They weren't going to get close to what Hassan wanted. The Jets aren't close to what Hassan wanted. I don't know what Hassan's ask numbers are, but he's sticking to them, and shame on the Jets that they didn't know what they were going to be, and they could be looking at this potential problem.
Yeah, this is what I find bizarre. The Jets almost act as if we're the Jets. You'll get your money. Yeah, don't worry about it. And then when it came time to negotiate, they went, well, we can't do that. I mean, how do you not know that ahead of time? You can't just give it lip service at the beginning. You got to take it seriously and do your homework.
Major faux pas on the part of Joe Douglas, the Jets general manager, because you do watch Huff go out the door. And again, I've got opinions on both of these players. I think Hassan Reddick's a better player. I know he's older, but I absolutely believe he's a better player.
No doubt.
And the Eagles paid Huff good money to bring him in, so you know Huff's going out your door. You're going to replace him. It's going to be Hassan Reddick. It can actually be an upgrade for us. But you got to know what the cost is. And you know what the cost is that you had to give the Eagles, but the cost to Hassan Reddick, apparently they're surprised by and or not willing to get up into that neighborhood to get a deal done. That's all on the Jets. They should not be facing this issue that they have right now. They never should have traded for him in the first place if they knew his ask number was going to be what it is.
It's not a hypothetical that the NFL management wants 18 games. That's not a hypothetical. But in a hypothetical, if you're the Players Association, Jody, what do you think they should ask for in return for an 18th game? Because bodies get battered.
That's a great question because I don't know the answer. Anytime someone asks me a great question I don't know the answer to, I immediately say it's great. Less practice again? Because every time they go into a negotiation between the players and the owners are always willing to give something, but it's not money. They don't want to ever upgrade the percentage of the overall take that the players can then get a part of, and the players have settled for in the last several collective bargaining agreements: less practice, less padded practice, less time that you have to be at the facility. They always keep compromising the amount of time that the players spend with the teams, which we get the quality of product that we have. I think it's less than it used to be, but you can't tell that by attendance and or television ratings. All it does is go up and up and up and up and up. So the owners never blanch and say, yeah, we'll just let you guys do a little less work. I don't know what is the ancillary benefit they can offer to the players anymore. Maybe if the amount is big enough, they can give them a small percentage, a small chunk, and give them more money. But the owners have held the ground on that for the last several collective bargaining agreements they've done with the players when it's meant added revenues. I honestly don't know. Steve, you got me on that one.
I think I know where I would start. I would start with something simple as I want a second bye week. And then I would want rules around that second bye week as to how much you're able to be each other and meet. I mean, I would start with that second bye week to give at least somebody a chance to heal up. I mean, it's simple, but I'm a simple guy, Joe.
It's a simple, but it's a smart answer, as a matter of fact, and it's something that the owners shouldn't blanch at because it just extends the season. And the longer the season, the better the season for, yes, the players get some downtime, but they're committing for that much longer a season, another bye week and another game, so you're adding 2 more weeks to the overall season. If that's enough for the players, I think the owners would offer that tomorrow.
Yeah, all right. So now let's get to the Phillies, speaking of long seasons. And it's been a long season. They're still sitting there at 20 games over 500. They're still sitting there right now with the second best record in the National League, a couple of percentage points behind the Dodgers. What is your opinion of the state of the Phillies today?
They're okay,
yeah,
which is not great and not bad, and there is some panic going on, which I'm not sure is justified or warranted. But they're okay. They are where they are. They've got a comfortable lead in the division, which means they're going to win the division. They're going to be in the postseason. They need to finish ahead of either the Brewers or the Dodgers and make sure they don't have to play in that wild card round, which makes it a little bit trickier. But they're okay. What they need is Ranger Suarez has got to come back, and he's got to be Ranger Suarez. And I'm not talking about the Ranger Suarez who was a legit Cy Young candidate for the first 2 months of the season. He was overachieving, and people might have gotten a little caught up on it. But he's a solid starter in Major League Baseball, and he hasn't been for a while now. And when he comes back, you have to hope that he's better than he was before he got hurt, even if it's not Cy Young level Ranger. If you're going with Wheeler is your ace, surely. And Nola's going to do what he's going to do, which is more good than bad. Christopher Sanchez, we'll read him over the next 4 months and find out, is he locked to get a start in a postseason series or not. But first things first, we got to find out what Ranger is. And we don't know exactly when Ranger's coming back, and his 4 starts end of August into September will tell us a lot as to whether the Phillies have a World Series running.
Right, exactly. I'd also like to point out that they're in the position they are today because all the games in April and May counted. And the people sometimes it gets forgotten in the moment. Those games did count. That's why they are where they are. Offensively, what do you think of them at this point?
The outfield isn't good enough, and that's not good. Marsh has been pretty brutal over the last 3 or 4 weeks now. He's striking out at an extended rate that we've never seen him do before. They're going to need Hayes to come back. And Hayes is one of the most intriguing players on this team.
Yeah.
I really love the fact that the guy swings the bat hard every time he gets in there. And if he's going to hit it, he's going to hit it hard, but he also isn't the best judge of talent as to what's in the strike zone and what's not. Mm-hmm. He's had some god-awful, ugly-looking swings. But when he makes contact and he swings as hard as he does, he's got a chance to get big hits. And right now they don't have him, but they said the hamstring is going to be marginal, kind of like Marsh when he got hurt. Schwarber is only going to be 10 days and then boom, right back in. Mm-hmm. They need him back in because if Marsh is struggling the way he is, they need Hayes back. I'm not sure that Weston Wilson and or the guy that they just called up the other day from Allentown who's having a really nice AAA season, I'm not excited about having them in a postseason lineup. So they need Hayes back, and Hayes has got to be able to be his best Hayes if this team's going to have an average outfield, and they're going to have to go above and beyond average when they get to the postseason.
Obviously, you grew up in a time where a guy got a ball and he'd go 7-8 innings, especially if he's the ace of the staff. We've talked about this part before. But as I mentioned in the beginning, the Red Sox got caught up in something where they had a bullpen day. It was Saturday. And then James Paxton, their starter, went out and got hurt on the third batter of the game on Sunday. Well, it's the day after a bullpen game, so there's nobody left in the bullpen. What has always been your thought on when you see bullpen days in modern baseball, considering what you grew up with?
Yeah, I've never liked it, but I know it's what baseball is in 2022, 23, 24. It's certainly been this way for a good couple of years now. And if you're going to do it, and you know you're going to do it before the season starts, you better start with an 11 to 12-man deep pitching staff.
Yep.
And I think the Phillies were in pretty good position to start this season, and I'm still good with where they are now. I'm not panicking about the bullpen. Right. I know Hoffman gave up the walk-off home run in Arizona, one pitch, see you later, bye, they lose. I know Matt Strahm got pummeled on one game in the road trip, and these are two all-star relievers the Phillies had. I still got faith in their bullpen. The new acquisition that they got from California hasn't given up an earned run yet. His ERA is 0.00. That's always a good thing. Given up a couple long flies, but hey, you keep them in the park, you keep them in the park. I think the Phillies bullpen will be solid come postseason time. And once you get to postseason, you do try and lean on your starter to go a little bit longer than you do during the regular season, and you get a couple extra days off. So I don't think bullpen will be an issue for the Phillies for the rest of August into September and October. I think they're good in the pen.
My friend, it is always a pleasure. Outstanding as always. Appreciate any time I get a chance to talk with you.
Have a good Penn State season. If you get me back up during the Penn season, I'll talk whatever Penn State you want. I think it should be a fun, expanded Big Ten season. You have a great season.
I will. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Thanks, Jody.